hello to you. A very warm welcome to the programme. We're going to start today with money, or, well, the lack of it. Poor access to finance is forcing more small businesses across Europe and the United States to turn to credit cards and crowdfunding just to stay afloat. Today's report from Hiscox Insurance shows just how much pressure businesses are under given the current economic climate. It found that 22% of small and medium-sized enterprises, that's SMEs, are now finding it harder to access bank financing. That is up sharply on the same time last year. But what's worrying is that 17% of those small firms are now using a credit card just to fund the business. And that's also been rising steadily for the past 3 years. 10% are even considering crowdsourcing cash through peer-to-peer lending sites to fund their business. The report also shows just how difficult it is to succeed, with 40% of people who set up their business in the past 4 years still relying on income from outside sources rather than the business funding itself. But there is some good news. 66% of small business owners reported that their revenues had grown in the past year. Sally.
Thank you very much, Ben. Well, I'm joined by Jag Singh, who's a digital expert and serial entrepreneur, with me to pass on some advice. Good to see you, Jag.
Morning.
Before we get top tips for those who are struggling to get funding, why are we in the situation we're in? Surely the banks have been pressurised and told by governments to lend out. That will boost economic growth.
They have, and the package earlier sort of highlighted that some banks are now considering charging for deposits to larger businesses. I have to qualify that. There's never been a greater time, never been a better time for anyone to start their own business. You've got government departments, you've got big business, you've got local government, you've got business angels, angel investors, all singing off the same crib sheet. It's a little bit annoying that banks haven't got the memo, but there is this void left behind by the banks that's actually being filled by entrepreneurs. And we've seen crowdfunding platforms, we've seen peer-to-peer lending platforms kind of fill in those gaps.
Well, that's the good news, but it's not easy, is it, to get the attention you need to raise money when it comes to crowdfunding? Because if you're a small business and you're not a sexy technology business or a biotech company or something that people are really keen to invest in, it's hard to get that money you need. Whereas if you just walk to the bank and say, hey, this is my business plan and I need funding, that's much easier, isn't it?
It is, and we're in that kind of catch-22 situation where banks have never been good at lending to people who don't have credit or don't have something to show for it. And in the same way, banks require lots of collateral from businesses, and these are fledgling startup businesses. They don't have that kind of collateral to sort of put up or assets to put up. And so we're finding that lots of entrepreneurs are actually having to remortgage their homes, dip into credit card funding, dip into the bank of mom and dad. It's not just for homes now. Lots of entrepreneurs are borrowing money from friends and family. And I mean, I think that's actually the way it has been for the last 40, 50 years. Those closest to you believe in you, they invest in you, and they want to see you succeed. And that's your best chance of actually getting some funding for your business.
What's the advice, though, for investors as well, those who are on the other side of crowdfunding, i.e. have £1,000 or something around that sum to put into a startup? How do you make sure you make the right choice? You're not just going to throw your money down the drain.
Well, I think the best way to do that is to pick the right crowdfunding platform. No two platforms are exactly alike. And what we've seen in the last few years is that sector-specific advice from people who have experience in the industry. So if you're in the retail industry, go to a platform that has people who have actually built businesses in the retail industry investing in on these sorts of platforms.
But just really briefly, if you're trying to start a business, you've got to think out the box, haven't you, when it comes to your funding?
Absolutely. Talk to everyone you can talk to, as many business angels as you can. Talk to the government. They've set up loads of helplines, loads of services for fledgling entrepreneurs, and actually even big businesses have now set up incubators where they're trying to pass on their learnings onto smaller startups.
Jag, thanks so much for your time. It's about angels, incubators, crowds, peers.
What more could you
It's all happening.
Yeah.